Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you could please make sure that you signed in up front, we would appreciate it. We'll just wait for a couple of people who are signing in. Also, while I have you, there is a QR code for the questionnaire, and there's also computers for you to take the questionnaire. So it's very, very important for us that we get your comments and your feedback, both at this meeting as well as on the computers, because I'm sure people are going to want to know. Again, good evening, and thank you so much for being with us tonight. The fact that you are here truly means that you care about Bolingbrook and what happens. And you are the residents, and that's why we're here this evening, is to hear from you on important topics. I'm sure that this will not be the last time that we get together and discuss topics, at least I hope not. But again, we wanted to get your feedback. This is a very, very important subject to Bolingbrook. It's one that we've been speaking about for probably over a year now, year and a half. And Trustee Carpenzano will give you a little bit of the history of where we were and where we are and everything that has transpired in between. I do want to introduce our panel of experts this evening. We have Attorney Bert Odelson from Odelson Stirk. We also have Lauren Duvall, Odelson Stirk. Ray Jones, Inspector for the Illinois State Police Cannabis Control Office, and also should be joining us, but I think has hit some traffic, is Dr. Arnold from the Illinois Department of Public Health. So what we're going to do is first of all, just so you know, this is, it's not, no decisions have been made. This is the first step to figure out where we go from here. If the surveys and the feedback is positive, then step 2 will be to our planning commission, and then step 3 will be to the village board for approval. So everything that we are going to provide you with this evening is strictly factual information. Feel free to please jot down notes, and after we present, then you're welcome to come up and ask your questions. This is not being televised live, however, we will be replaying it through the village website. Okay? All right. Trustee Carpenzano, you want to start?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. As the mayor said, just a little bit of background. I think if you're here tonight, you've probably followed the topic. We wrote this up, and I figured instead of me ad-libbing, I'm just going to read it the way that it is. So just so everyone knows, back in January 1st, 2020, the state of Illinois began allowing consumers to buy marijuana for recreational use from licensed sellers. Consumers aged 21 and older can buy marijuana products from licensed sellers in Illinois with or without a medical marijuana card. Purchases of cannabis flower or other cannabis-infused products from licensed sellers in the state are charged a sales tax from the state of Illinois. Furthermore, Illinois municipalities and counties are able to levy additional local sales taxes. In late 2019, the village of Bolingbrook opted out of allowing cannabis business to operate in the community. This topic, as you see tonight, is currently under discussion, and that is the truth, as the mayor mentioned. That is the purpose of, I can't remember how many board meetings the mayor has mentioned this, for discussion purposes only, and then having tonight's town hall to gauge all sides of feedback and present facts about the topic, because as we've all heard as sitting trustees, there's a lot of theories that float around. Tonight's important to hear about the facts and obviously hear opinion from our residents. So that's a little bit of the background. We're here tonight to move forward on sort of investigations on what's transpired, proposals that you'll hear this evening, and answer questions, but that's the background, Mayor.
Thank you. I think first we'll start with the presentation from Odelson Stirk. We present it up here, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Duvall. I'm an associate attorney with Odelson and Stirk, the city's, the village attorneys. I've been sort of following the licensing and regulation and state statutes and local laws regarding cannabis since the Illinois Cannabis and Tax Act was passed. I have a brief overview PowerPoint just about the state regulations and licensing. So the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Program Act was passed in 2014. This is medical cannabis, medical marijuana. That's what this act allowed. Under the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Program Act, there were 22 medical cultivation centers allowed in Illinois. Those were dispersed throughout the state. There were also 60 medical cannabis dispensaries dispersed throughout Illinois. The cultivation centers are where the cannabis is grown and packaged, and the dispensaries are where the medical cannabis patients can go to purchase the medical cannabis. I have a map here. It might be a little hard to see, but the pink dots are the 22 licensed medical cannabis cultivation centers in Illinois. This map is important, as I will get to in the future, later on in the presentation, as all 22 of these medical cannabis cultivation centers are now licensed to also cultivate adult use cannabis. So every dot on that map now can cultivate both medical and adult use cannabis. This map here is the 60 licensed medical cannabis dispensaries in Illinois. Like I said, the dispensaries are where the medical cannabis patients can go and purchase cannabis. Again, this is also an important map because under the adult use cannabis law, every single one of these medical cannabis dispensaries can now sell both medical and adult use cannabis. The next slide is just a closer up version of this map showing Chicago and suburbs. The first map showed the entire state of Illinois. This is a map showing the medical cannabis dispensaries in Chicago and suburbs. And like I said before, these now are all medical and adult use cannabis dispensaries. So moving on to 2020, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act was passed. The Tax Act was effective July 19th of 2019, with most of the provisions going into effect in 2020. A broad description of this act is that it regulates the possession and use of cannabis by adults and imposes regulations for licensing of cannabis businesses. I've already talked about dispensaries and cultivation centers. The Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act also created 3 new categories of cannabis businesses. Those are cannabis transporters, infusers, and craft growers. So adult use cannabis cultivation centers are these large-scale indoor growing facilities of up to 210,000 square feet. Like I said earlier, all 22 licensed medical cannabis dispensaries have also been licensed to grow adult use cannabis. The Illinois Department of Agriculture can issue more adult use cultivation center licenses, but it's not required to. So at this point, there are 22 large-scale cultivation centers in the state of Illinois, all of which cultivate both medical and adult use cannabis. Now, craft growers are a new, kind of a new term, a new category under this act. They are smaller scale indoor growing facilities of up to 5,000 square feet of growing area. The Illinois Department of Agriculture has issued 39 craft grower licenses as of November 1st, 2021. My understanding is that none of them are actually operational yet. Everything was kind of slowed down with COVID, so while these licenses have been given out, I don't believe any have actually become operational. The Illinois Department of Agriculture is also in the process of reviewing applications for an additional 60 licenses for these craft growers. These are new to the cannabis industry, new companies, new businesses doing a more smaller scale grow operation, strictly for adult use cannabis. Cannabis transporters, these are individuals who are, or companies who are authorized to transport cannabis on behalf of cannabis business establishments. They can travel between cultivation centers, craft growers, infusers, dispensaries, and testing facilities. The Illinois Department of Agriculture has issued 46 transporter licenses as of November 1st. There are currently no limits on the number of licenses. Within Illinois, any cannabis sold at a dispensary must be grown in Illinois. You can't transport cannabis over state lines. So these transporters are the only individuals who are allowed to transport cannabis from where it's grown to where it's sold. Finally, Cannabis Infusers. These are companies that directly incorporate cannabis into a product to produce a cannabis-infused product. So, well, that definition is kind of repetitory. Cannabis-infused products are beverages, foods, oils, ointments, tinctures, topical formulations. This is your common gummies, cookies, brownies, things that are not smokable cannabis, but cannabis that you can ingest. So far, there have been 32 infuser licenses as of November 1st of 2021. And finally, the most important topic, the adult use cannabis dispensaries. These dispensaries are authorized to sell cannabis at retail to customers over the age of 21. They don't require a medical card. They don't require you to be a cannabis patient. They are authorized to sell at retail to anyone over the age of 21. Like I said earlier, all 60 medical cannabis dispensaries can now also sell adult use cannabis. So that was the first round of licensing, is the 60 dispensaries now can do both medical and adult use cannabis. In addition, these 60 were allowed to establish a secondary site throughout Illinois. These are the majority of the new dispensaries that are popping out throughout the state. These are secondary sites from a corporation or company business that has already been established and that has already had a medical cannabis business for a period of time. And as of November 1st, 2021, these are the only licensed cannabis dispensaries in Illinois. Again, this is basically the same, this is both same site and secondary site. So this map shows all the cannabis dispensaries that are authorized to dispense adult use cannabis throughout the state of Illinois. The next slide is a closer up version of the Chicagoland area. As you can see, the pink are the original medical cannabis dispensaries. The black are the secondary sites that each one of these pink businesses then made for their secondary site. So the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Responsibility, what is the acronym for? I always screw it up.
Professional regulation.
Professional regulation is in the process of licensing 75 new cannabis dispensaries. These are newcomers to the business. I'm sure you've heard on the news, there's been a lot of delays. There have been lotteries and different legislation that's been passed that is too complicated for me to understand. So, so we'll just say that it's been on hold. The regulatory agency will issue at least 50 additional conditional adult use dispensary licenses on or before December 21st of 2022. In the statute, it specifies that at no time should there be any more than 500 adult use cannabis dispensary licenses given out for the entire state of Illinois. So this brings us to local regulation. There aren't many provisions in the state statute saying what local governments can and cannot do. They can tax cannabis, adult use cannabis. They also can enact reasonable ordinances regulating the time, place, manner, and number of cannabis businesses. So some of what that looks like is distance limitations between cannabis businesses and sensitive uses like schools, parks, libraries, hospitals. requiring a special use permit and imposing certain conditions on that special use permit. What that means is that if someone wants to open a cannabis business, they have to apply to the village, go through a public hearing before the Planning Commission, who then can either recommend issuing the special use permit or recommend not issuing the special use permit, then goes to the village board, who then makes the decision whether or not to issue that permit. So there are certain safeguards that are in place in that procedure so that the village is aware of these businesses, where they would go, and can put certain conditions on their location. Municipalities can also prohibit all or certain cannabis businesses or limit the number of each business. The statute also allows local governments to authorize on-premises consumption of cannabis at a tobacco store or a dispensary. I believe Springfield is in the process of doing this, but I think that's the only municipality I've heard of that has taken the state up on their offer to allow on-premises consumption. Moving on briefly to cannabis possession and use. Illinois adult possession limits are 30 grams of cannabis flower, and this picture actually shows what 30 grams looks like. 5 grams of cannabis concentrate. The picture next to that, that's not to scale. I don't know how many grams that is, but that shows you what cannabis concentrate looks like. And 500 milligrams of THC in cannabis infused products. Those are your gummies and brownies and cookies and things that I mentioned earlier. It's still illegal for minors under the age of 21 to possess cannabis, use cannabis, possess cannabis paraphernalia. Also, the use and possession of cannabis is prohibited by anyone in many places, public places, inside a motor vehicle, in schools, on school buses, in correctional facilities, daycares, in close proximity to an individual under the age of 21, any place where smoking is prohibited by the Smoke-Free Illinois Act and by a law enforcement officer, CDL driver, not officer, or firefighter while on duty. It's still illegal in Illinois to manufacture, deliver, or possess with intent to deliver any amount of cannabis unless you're licensed by the state. So it's still illegal to buy cannabis off the street, still illegal to buy cannabis from an individual who's not licensed by the state. You can only buy cannabis at a licensed dispensary. It's also still illegal to drive under the influence of cannabis and to use cannabis on private property without the consent of the owner or possessor, and to grow your own cannabis plants. However, if you are a qualified medical patient, you are allowed to grow your own cannabis plants, but there are certain restrictions on that. Oh. And that's it. So that's just a brief, broad overview of what the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act has imposed on Illinois and the various possession and use requirements and cannabis establishments and their regulations. So I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any questions.
Questions after?
Sure,
Mr.
sure.
Ellison, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, only thing I would add, Mayor, is that each community, if they seek to grant licenses to dispensaries, is able to regulate, as Lauren said, somewhat according to their community, and also to impose some additional fees. We've drafted ordinances in quite a number of municipalities geared toward the municipalities' needs and desires and demographics as to security measures, lighting, hours of operation, some additional revenue incentives, things like that that are maybe peculiar to that municipality, and something that the mayor and the board wishes for a dispensary in the village. So it's been working successfully in the municipalities that have chosen to license and then regulate. The regulation is through the state, as Lauren said. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. But the municipality also regulates as to police protection and making sure that none of the laws are violated, again, according to the new law. So, and we'll be open for questions after all the presenters.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Nothing in particular, just here to. Testing. Thank you. Nothing in particular here. We're just here to answer any questions that may fall under our purview as the regulators. So the Illinois Department of Professional Regulations regulates the cannabis industry. The cultivation centers fall under the Department of Agriculture as well. So our inspectors are tasked with going out to make sure that the dispensaries and cultivation centers follow all the rules and the regulations, and that goes from safety, that goes from product safety, community safety, some of the distances between schools and so forth, security measures. So just to kind of give you an idea of how stringent and extensive those are, one of my cultivation centers is in Aurora. That center has 161 cameras, okay? So everything inside, outside, deliveries and so forth is monitored electronically on a daily basis. And each location is inspected by the state police, who I represent here tonight, Office of Cannabis Control, and also the Illinois Department of Professional Regulation does their own inspections on those locations as well. So it's a highly regulated industry with some very stringent requirements that have to be followed by the dispensaries and the cultivation centers, and violation of any of those are very hefty fines.
Thank you. And I just got a message. Unfortunately, Dr. Arnold is not going to be able to make it. He got stuck in a impromptu IDPH meeting. So with that, we also have with us from our planning department, Matt Eastman. And basically, Matt is going to show you where we currently have dispensaries that are near us. And it's kind of a little bit hard to see, but we'll figure it out.
So I'll have the map up here, obviously, if anyone wants to step up. But what I was able to do is just kind of simply come together with a map. So Bolingbrook's here, obviously, similar to the map that Lauren showed earlier. Within 15 miles of town center, there's 15 different cannabis dispensaries that you can go to. They range from 3 in Naperville, there's 1 in Lombard, Orland Park, Oakbrook Terrace, Romeoville. So many are within 5 miles of town center. So it just gives you a better idea of where they are in relation to the village. And then also we've started to kind of put together a buffer map signifying our large retail areas, and then also showing where our schools and daycares are just in relation to those areas, just to start to get our eyes around how far these potentially would be if we did go down that road. So I'll have this up here for anybody that wants to view it. And then if there's any questions that would pertain to me, I can answer that.
Thank you. Now we'll just take some questions from the audience. Please feel free to line up at the mic and then ask questions to the experts or to the trustees, or just general questions.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening. Darrell Parks, 616 Rebecca Lane, Bolingbrook. Just a couple of quick questions. Adult versus medical dispensaries, is it a medical dispensary you have to have a medical card? I'm trying to figure out the difference. Okay. And then my second question, because I'll be back. My second question is, on one of the slides where under possession and use, it was stated that you couldn't possess it in your automobile, you couldn't have it in your car?
You can't use cannabis in
Oh,
your
use
car.
it in your
You
car.
can possess it, but you have to have it in a enclosed lock
Right.
case.
Okay, that's about, I'd have to walk home. Okay.
I'm here. My name is Sheila Thomas, 350.
You want to lower the microphone?
I'm sorry?
You want to lower the microphone a little bit?
I have a big mouth. Can't you hear me? That's fine. I'm here because I read when we had this on a referendum and it was voted down, I was really curious to find out what a lot of people's reasonings are, given the fact that there are so many locations close to us in proximity. And I don't see why we should not take advantage of the businesses that's out there, generate more tax revenue, and help us with other things that we want to accomplish in Bolingbrook.
Great, thank you. So just for clarification, this was an item that was supposed to be placed on the April 6th ballot in the form of a referendum. Unfortunately, there was another referendum that was submitted that kicked the cannabis referendum off of the ballot. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. If that was on the ballot, then we would have had our answer back in April 6th. So unfortunately, we did not get the opportunity to actually put it on the ballot.
I think that this was prior to you taking office. A couple of years ago, there was some question on the ballot.
The board voted to not allow it. They took a wait and see process to see what was going to happen. It was a cash business. It was a new business, so it wasn't. So the board made the decision to not allow it at that time and see how it progressed. But it wasn't actually ever on a ballot, if you will.
Okay.
But thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hi there, Monty Jackson, 451 Aristocrat Drive, and I'd like to make a few comments if I might. First, I'd like to thank the mayor and the trustees for allowing me to speak on this subject tonight. Second, as I've already introduced myself, my name is Monty Jackson, and I have been a resident here in Bolingbrook for 21 years, same house, same place. And I'd like to make a couple of topics of housing a dispensary here in Bolingbrook tonight. Having a dispensary within the Bolingbrook Village would bring in additional revenue that is needed and currently being given to Romeoville, Joliet, and Naperville. As an example, in Naperville, they have a tax. It's a 45-cent tax on a $60 purchase. $60 purchase is 3.5 grams. It's called an eighth, which is how it's usually sold. So Naperville both has a 45-cent tax on a $60 purchase. Additionally, there is an RTA tax of 45 cents. And part of that 45 cents is returned back into Will County and is utilized to recondition our roads and infrastructure maintenance within Will County. And this information was shared with me by a member of the Will County Board as I was doing some research on this topic. Secondly, additionally, Naperville places a municipality excise tax of $1.80 on a $60 purchase, which equals out to roughly about 3%. With that being said, from a $60 purchase, the Village of Bolingbrook would be gaining $2.25. With the dispensary in Bolingbrook, it would prevent the Bolingbrook residents from traveling to the surrounding communities to make these purchases, thereby keeping our money within our own community here. And it would add additional revenue to the village tax base, which I'm sure that we all need. So with that being said, I thank you for allowing me to share these few thoughts with you tonight, and I hope that this will be a seriously considered topic for our village. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Norman Brown, longtime resident of Bolingbrook. And I want to thank the mayor for hosting this town hall discussion on cannabis and the possibility that Bolingbrook could, at some point, have a dispensary. I thank you also for allowing me this opportunity to speak on this matter. To be clear, I am for allowing a recreational cannabis dispensary to operate in Bolingbrook. To be also clear, I am for a dispensary to be either black or brown owned and operated for obvious reasons. Chief among them is these communities have been disproportionately affected socially and economically, and the rate of incarceration for the so-called war on drug and crime. Therefore, these communities deserve the benefit the most. And for social equity, all money generated from the 3% tax that the village plans to levy should go towards resolving social and economic issues in underserved and R3 areas here in Bolingbrook already identified by the state. So I thank you for the time, and I'm available for any further discussion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Felicia. I am the Deputy Director for Chicago NORML. NORML stands for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law. It's been around since the 70s, but the Chicago chapter has been around since 2017. So I just have a little statement. Cannabis has been used to disproportionately harm people of color for decades through the war on drugs and similar anti-working class programs. Chicago NORML actively works to reverse the harm of this malpractice has done in our community. Social equity is important in the state of Illinois, and the General Assembly and the governor agrees. With this recent passage of cannabis social equity legislation, we hope that Bolingbrook can follow suit and pass racial and social equity regulations. The intent of the social equity program is to allow those affected by the war on drugs to legally participate within the cannabis industry and support racial equity as well. Bolingbrook should have a social equity Black-owned dispensary instead of a multi-state operator for the following reasons. Bolingbrook is an R3 area, and those who live there can benefit from the sales of cannabis through employment and reinvesting in their community. Having a Black-owned dispensary empowers the community to become self-sufficient economically and build generational wealth. This is a way to support those affected by the war on drugs and reverse the impact it has had on the Black and brown community. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, good evening, everybody. My name is T.A. Johnson. I'm a chef, been on Food Network, 4-time James Beard Award nominated Michelin star chef. I've worked with the operations, and when they were doing legalization, I was in the room at the Hoxton Hotel hearing all the new innovations with cannabis. And it's so amazing to me how we are progressing so forwardly in cannabis, to the point now that we have it in multivitamins, we have it in tonics, we have it in sublingual administrations, intravenous, transdermal, and subtopical as well. The reason why I'm here is that I've been working with my good friend here, Troy Doris. We actually went to high school together. I'm actually a cannabis entrepreneur. I've been working on a project for about 2 years now, called Eden. And what Eden is going to be it's going to be out in Elwood, Illinois, and it's going to be a 116-acre, fully luxurious private cannabis resort, 100% consumption, our own cultivation center. It's basically a mecca for cannabis. And the only reason I had the opportunity is because of inclusion. It's because of social equity. And I know some people here are now where they are, we've heard the demonization of cannabis. That's why I use cannabis. I don't say marijuana. Marijuana is a racist term towards all people of color. They use the word marijuana to determine us as lazy and good for nothing people. So when I speak about it, I say cannabis. And so what we're doing here is that we are determining the future of not just our neighbors, but the future of the people in general. People of all different races and creeds and colors who are coming together to say, you know what, cannabis helps us out. I'm also a licensed medical caretaker. I'm a licensed medical caretaker. I'm also trained to be a bud tender. I can show you how to do a grow house. I can show you how to infuse. I teach classes. I mean, anything with cannabis I'm involved in. I'm actually good friends with Felicia, who just got up here, which is so crazy that I'm seeing her here tonight. And I'm letting you guys know this is something that can help us all out. We should not be sitting here dying from big pharmaceutical. Too many of us are in here on walkers and canes because they gave us medicine, they gave us a 5% survival rate. We don't need that. God gave us something here that's natural and powerful to the point where it has a thing called a Entourage Effect. That means it does not only go to one thing, but it goes to multiple things in the body. If you have epilepsy, it calms the sensors. If you have AIDS, it helps with AIDS patients, cancer patients, bulimia. I mean, thousands of things. We used to grow it here in groves. It was once in the U.S. pharmacopoeia. It is the first ever known agricultural crop that man has ever harvested. And the reason why we had this whole prohibition of it is not because it's a bad to our system. It's because a man by the name of William Randolph Hearst. You go home tonight, Google him. He was a lumber tycoon and said, hemp and cannabis is destroying my industry. So he greased palms and said, make it illegal. And so back then they did. And so if we sit here and we pass up on this opportunity to not only help our community, but to help the people, let them know that we love you, you can get jobs here. I've seen dispensaries where grandmothers are working as bud tenders. You know, I've seen dispensaries where they have nothing but vets as security. This is something that we need to come together on and say, you know what, I might not like it as much as you do, but if it can help us out and help us get back on track, then why not do it, okay? I promise you. I know some of us in here are a little scared about it, but I promise you it's nothing. The only thing that can happen to you is you get the munchies, you know, you can watch Netflix, I don't know, but let's just...
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Sterile Parks again, and I don't know anything about the munchies. I would say, you know, having listened to the last few people who have spoken about social equity, this is my town. I would like to see Bolingbrook lead the way in social equity. And I would humbly challenge everybody up here to keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward with this process. Mayor, you said that we got a lot more steps to go. And I applaud everyone here for being here to listen to our concerns. I don't have a concern, but I would just like to see the social equity piece move a little bit more to the forefront as we go through the process to make these decisions. And I just challenge, you know, everybody loves a challenge, right? I just challenge everybody to please keep that in mind. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex McNulty. Moved to Bolingbrook probably 22 years ago with my family from the west side of Chicago. First of all, to the presenting panel, that was an excellent job. Thank you. Next, Mayor and the trustees of Bolingbrook, thank you for even having the courage to, I feel, tackle a subject that Bolingbrook probably would have been hands off. And so I appreciate that. To our dignitaries, I think you've heard loud and clear from your constituents about the importance of the social justice aspect. I think there are none to date within the state of Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. I think you guys probably can quantify that data, but I don't think we have any African American dispensaries owned within the state. I may be wrong, but I'm I'm almost for sure we are at zero. I have a question, but I wanted to make those acknowledgments. If approved, would the facility be located in a strip mall type commercial area like Naperville or more of an industrial park setting in Romeoville? And my second question is, if approved, how would the revenue more be used?
If you look at Mr. Eastman's map, and I'm sorry that we had some printer issues, but he has circles with the colors of, you know, where the schools are, where the houses of worship are, where houses are. So you could probably take a closer look at that and realize what availability there is, because once you start pocketing those areas, then you become limited. So it would have to go to the Plan Commission. It would have to receive a variance because it's not allowed. So even if we do allow it, they would have to come, they would have to present. It would, you know, all the questions that you guys brought up, like staffing and aesthetics and what's it going to look like and security, all those things would have to be vetted, obviously, by the Plan Commission. With regards to revenue, Look, I'm going to tell you, and everybody talks about the money, and we're letting the money go outwards. But we talk about that because we want to know our taxes. And is this going to lower our taxes? And I think we all know that that's the unknown, but probably not likely. And not likely because there's so many other factors that feed into our taxes. What's going on around us? What are the gas prices? What's the lumber prices now? So too many unknowns, plus the cost of living. And the village is no different from any of the other businesses around that have been impacted in some way, shape, or form. So for me to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, let's open some cannabis stores and your taxes are going to go down, no. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't think that that will happen. Actually, I'm pretty darn sure it won't happen. And we don't know what the revenue is because, as stated, there have been many more licenses issued. And so even with us opening here in Bolingbrook, sure, we're going to get some out of Naperville, some out of Romeoville, maybe some new users. But what that number looks like, we just don't know. We know what other municipalities have reported last year, but again, it was something new, and they were kind of new to the business. So I can't answer your question to what we would target it to specifically, because I don't know what that number looks like.
Good evening. I'm Joe Jamanco, a local resident, business owner as well. A couple things. 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, this board, most of this board, was here and voted and restricted cannabis-based businesses. Myself, Mr. Brown, a few other people spoke up at the time and voiced the opinion that that was a mistake. I appreciate the fact that you're revisiting it now. I do have a couple questions. Mayor, you mentioned earlier about the referendum issue, and I just want to go back in time to when those referendums were voted on, because little election law, and Mr. Odelson can probably preach this to you better than I can, because it's his area, but you can only have 4 referendum questions on a ballot. One was submitted by a group of residents. That same night, this board voted on 4, and so it's the first 4 that go on the ballot. Prior to that vote that night, the cannabis question, I believe, was number 2 or number 3, and the board voted to move it back to be the 4th vote. Why was that?
You can only have 3 referendum questions on at any one time, whether it's by the board putting it on or by the public putting it on. So the board did vote to put a number of referendums on the ballot. When the referendum was filed, that took priority, so it removed I believe the last one on the ballot that we had, and the last one was the cannabis one.
And I stand corrected, 3, you're right.
Yeah.
But my question is the original order that was on the agenda for the board to vote on that night had cannabis as either number 1 or number 2, and before you took the vote, you moved it to number 3. No one ever explained why that was, but had that not been done, it would have been voted on. So I'm wondering, why was that done?
I'm sorry, I don't recollect that. I apologize, but going back in time, I don't know and I don't remember. I'm not exactly sure.
I don't remember either. We just took, it was, the third one had to come off when the people's petition was filed.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
But when it went into the vote that night, that was not the third one. That's my concern. I'd really love the village board to address that at some point as far as why that was done, because it was intentional that night. My other question I have was, has the village board or anybody within the village had any conversations with any actual business owners who are interested, parties, in potentially developing a business? Because I want to echo what I've heard several people say tonight about social equity, social justice. I certainly hope there's not something being planned to make sure that if this passes, it goes to somebody who's being favored. I certainly hope everyone's going to start on equal footing and there's no, I don't know, we're not favoring one particular body already. So that's my question.
I'll be honest with you, we've only had one inquiry that has come into the village during my time, and it was a resident dispensary owner. That's the only thing that's come in, and that was prior to us really starting the conversation of looking at it, but nothing else. No decisions have been made. And there will be a process if it gets approved. I mean, we're still a ways away from that, but definitely there will be a process. Most important thing, as I stated before, is if this gets approved, we have to make sure, I'll refer to it as the Tiffany's of cannabis stores. So not like your hole-in-the-wall tobacco store. That's not, it has to be Bolingbrook. It has to be something that with a very heavy and proven security, because I do care about the residents. When we did Community Matters, they kind of filled me in a little bit on what the price was, and this was like a $5 to $10 gummy. I don't know that I could afford that, quite honestly. So, but things will be put into place if this gets approved. To say what that is and what that looks like right now, I just can't, because that's truly putting the cart before the horse. We still have some steps to take. So.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name's Thomas Walker. My only question is, really, what is there really to lose if the name of Bolingbrook and our slogan is, this is a place to grow? This is the place to grow. What is there really to lose? For our kids and ourselves and our own sanity, there's nothing too much in this regulation where there's a school right here, there's a school right here, there's a school right here, and we're all boxed in. We can only really put the cannabis place in certain spots anyways, and it just help our kids stay out of trouble without being overlooked at. That's all I really have to say. It's really for our kids' future and help us grow and build.
Thank you very much. I like the humor. Appreciate that.
It's a hard act to follow.
I know.
My name is Ray Macri. I'm a 48-year resident of Bolingbrook. I was just wondering if anyone on the panel here or anybody in the room has any statistics primarily involving our neighboring communities, how this operation of these sites has impacted, if at all, any public safety issues, primarily in the term of crime. The additional burden that it does put on the municipalities in terms of obviously going to have more people looking over these places. And I wonder if anyone has anything on that or crime statistics. Typical question I would have is, what do these legal dispensaries do to the street sellers? Does it chase them away? Does it have them lower their prices? Does it have them raise their prices? Or do they move on to the next neighborhood that does not have a dispensary? So if anybody could address that, I'll sit down and listen. Thank you.
Okay, the first question that you asked, the state police has not compiled crime statistics as it relates to dispensaries in the area. But I'm a resident of Bolingbrook, so I'm as concerned as most of you guys are as well. At this point, being a state inspector, I have everything that surrounds Bolingbrook. So I have Romeoville, I have 2 Joliet dispensaries, I have Naperville on 59, I have the Cultivation Center in Aurora, and I have Mokina and Morris. So unofficially, in speaking, because part of my job is to liaison with those chiefs of police in those areas. In speaking with the chiefs of police in those areas, they have not been able to articulate or show increased crime due to the dispensaries being in place. On the flip side of that, I have received calls from some of those chiefs of police saying we had an incident take place in and around the dispensary. Would you be willing to go into the cameras and look at what you've seen? So we've kind of helped them because of all the cameras on the exterior and the interior. As far as the security measures with the dispensaries are required to obtain their own security, and there are rules and regulations with that. They have to hire a private contractor and also follow up with their own security and work closely with the police departments in those areas.
I wanted to actually help on that subject as well. I've been studying the legalization process since, I want to say, 2009, 2010. Every place that has legalized has seen a 25% drop in opioid use, at least a 15% drop in domestic violence. We've seen more families come together. We've seen more families see less violence. As far as the black market, so to speak, is still existent because people still want to get that money. So that's something that we can't really count on if it's going away. But every place that I've seen where they've legalized, I've seen a tremendous increase of positivity as far as what the residents and the community, and also pushing for the objective of normalization, which is basically us having the talk saying, this is how it affects our community. It's help parents with children who have epilepsy and all different other ailments as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mary? In a number of the communities that we serve as a village or city attorney, we've entered into impact agreements with the dispensaries that have come in, which provides for extra security that they pay for, extra lighting, an impact fee over and above the dollar amounts that the gentleman articulated that Naperville charges to help ensure the safety of the area and the perimeter, as well as contributions to different charities. So the local community, over and above what the state allows us, provides in the statute, can add in extra safeguards to ensure the safety of the facility.
Hi, my name is Barbara Parker. I live at 178 Creekside Drive here in Bolingbrook, and I've been a resident for 20 years now. My question is, when the board last voted no on this topic, you took a wait-and-see approach. I want to know what you found out in that wait-and-see approach that you could share with us now. What makes you want to bring this up now and not like you did 2 years ago?
Well, again, it wasn't something, when we took a wait-and-see vote in 2019, I believe, it wasn't even legal yet. It was about to be legal. And we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it looked like. We didn't know the security requirements. We knew that it was a cash-only business, which possessed some risks in itself. So not knowing is what made us wait to see and figure out what it was exactly, what the requirements were, what the government parameters were by the state. So there just wasn't enough information at the time to make an educated decision. And what we know now is that we have visited some dispensaries, we've spoken to other mayors, we've spoken to other people in general, we've spoken to owners and cultivators, so we have a little bit more of a background that says to us, we're comfortable with opening the subject again because there's way more information now than there was back then. It was just too new, we didn't know.
Okay, I just wanted to know what made you come up with it now, so that was a good thing. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Hi, trustees. My name is Otis Gatlin. I've been a Bolingbrook resident for 16 years. I spoke in favor of this cannabis tax in August of 2019, so I'm glad you all are deciding to revisit it. I'm currently not a user, just for the record, but I am in favor for cannabis being in Bolingbrook. My question would be two questions. One, what is the projected or sales tax that would be for Bolingbrook residents and businesses? Will it be the same as Naperville and Romeoville, or lesser or more? Number two, what would be the infrastructure, meaning the code enforcement or like we regulate tobacco or alcohol process or staffing needed for this particular industry, because it's different from alcohol and tobacco?
Well, we passed, September was it? September or October?
September.
All the days are coming together, but we passed a 3% cannabis tax. It had to be in by a certain deadline in order for us to be able to collect the tax if it becomes approved in January. So 3% plus we get 1% from the state regardless of whether or not we sell it. So that's 1% that comes back to the municipality from cannabis sales, whether we have a dispensary or not. And I'm sorry, your question was with regards to staffing?
In terms of the regulation, code enforcement, like we would do tobacco or, liquor, in terms of will the additional staff be needed to accommodate the cannabis business? Meaning,
I think that's more of what the state does. They're almost like a health inspector for cannabis, so they're the ones that go in and check and make sure. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So there's a couple parts to it. I'll let the state talk in a minute, but locally, we have our police department, of course. The dispensary has to have their own security, plus our inspectors would be trained to inspect for any code violations, and we would have a cannabis commissioner, much like the mayor is the liquor commissioner. She would also be the cannabis commissioner and have the ability to suspend or revoke a license for any violation of our local ordinances. The state is the main regulator, but if the establishment is breaking any local laws, then the municipality would have a right to suspend or revoke the business license, which would be the mayor. Now, I'll let the state speak.
No, you've answered the question. So there are two entities from the state that would regulate the dispensaries. That's the Illinois Department of Professional Regulations and also Illinois State Police Controlled Cannabis Office would regulate all of those regulations specific to the dispensaries, and the municipality would continue to do what they would do with any other industry and so forth, and they work in conjunction, but one would not dovetail into the other.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions? Sure.
Norman Brown again. I was just sitting here thinking, just to put this in perspective, I think the mayor of Naperville reported at a forum that you hosted that they gross $2 million a year in sales taxes. He said, this is a big deal. So if done right here, it's a big deal. And it has to be done right. And then, I still think, though, that it should be black or brown owned and operated. But if done right, this can be successful and be a big deal. So if you bring it here, I hope it's done right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Crimer, 20-year resident of Bolingbrook. Just a couple of, first of all, I wanted to echo and support a lot of the comments that were made here already. I agree with a lot of them. But my questions were, are we focusing really on just a dispensary or also the possibility of a cultivation center? Because it sounds like that could have a lot more jobs and a lot more opportunity for residents, with a large cultivation center. I think you said 200,000 square feet or so. Are we limiting only to dispensaries? That'd be one question.
I think what we're looking at right now, possibly entertaining, is dispensary, just because of the space and the allotment of where it could be at this particular time. If it gets past go with regards to a dispensary, I don't think the board would be opposed to a cultivation, but I think coming and asking for all of it, again, at one time with the unknowns might be stretching it. I don't know, but definitely let the board provide their feedback on that.
Yeah, well, that was one of the questions I asked at one of the board meetings. If we were, I asked Bert Olison if we were going to just do specifically dispensaries or cultivation, and he did say, and he can kind of give feedback on this, that is up to discussion to us.
Right.
So if we, put our heads together and make that decision as we go, it is a decision that will be a group.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can just expound on that. It is much like a liquor license. So if someone comes in and asks for a liquor license, the board decides whether to increase the number of liquor licenses and give a liquor license. So if the board decides they want to go the route of welcoming cannabis to Bolingbrook, it's up to the board on a case-by-case basis to say they want a dispensary or two dispensaries or a cultivation center. So it's more on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and that's a good segue to my second question. If the state only has a limited number of licenses to give, I think you said about 100 or so, is there a deadline where decisions have to be made in Bolingbrook, or would it be too late because all the licenses have already been allocated in other places in the state?
We don't apply for the licenses.
Pardon me?
The village doesn't apply for the license.
No, the state. I think the state had a limited number of licenses.
Right, but that's
in
for
their-
the dispensary owners apply for those licenses, not us. So they most probably would already have their license or be in the process of getting their license and are looking for locations to call
Gotcha.
home.
So once a license is, I don't want to say issued, granted through this lottery process, they have 180 days to secure a location and get a site plan together and submit it to the state in order to get the actual license. So what I showed, I don't remember the numbers now, but the conditional approval, they're called conditional approval licenses, and the condition is that they have time to secure a location. So that's, I believe it's 180 days, don't quote me, but they have that time to then find a location and submit that to the state to make sure that their location and their site map and everything is up to state standards.
And just to add on to that, the reason to have this discussion now is that once the licenses have been allocated, as Lauren said, they only have 180 days to find a place. Right now, we are not a place. So that's why the mayor and the board decided to have this discussion now, so that if the board decides to open it up, we become a place, and applicants can then come in and submit their applications.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. So what's very, very important, again, there's a great number of people here. As you can see from the number of chairs we had, we didn't know what to expect. So thank you all again for coming out. We do have computers outside for the survey as well as QR code. And so what we're asking is, that's going to be a big determining factor as to what this board decides, because those are practically, because it wasn't, this is as close to being on a ballot as we can get. So getting that feedback to the trustees, they're all here. They'll be here, I'm sure, for a while. If you have any questions or feedback to them, it would be greatly appreciated. Sure. Yeah. All right. With that, thank you everyone for being here. Very much appreciated, and have a great night. Thank you.
Take care.